Welcome to Messages from Beyond, where the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. In today's chilling stories, we dive into eerie messages from those who have passed on. Messages that refuse to stay silent. Letters, calls, and even emails from the other side. These are the tales that will haunt your mind long after the screen goes dark. It started with a letter. Marian Dawson was sorting through her mail one chilly October afternoon in 2019 when she found an envelope that stood out. It was off-white, thick like parchment, and sealed with red wax in the shape of a crescent moon. No return address, no stamp, just her full name, handwritten in elegant script she didn't recognize. Her heart beat just a little faster. There was something unsettling about how personal it felt. Like someone had been watching her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of aged paper. The message read, "I'm so sorry about what's coming. Stay away from mirrors after midnight. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock." No signature. No explanation. First, she laughed it off. A Halloween prank, maybe. She even showed it to her coworker the next day, who shrugged and said it was probably some viral marketing campaign. But Marian couldn't shake the feeling that it was meant specifically for her. That night, as she brushed her teeth, her eyes kept flicking to the bathroom mirror. Her reflection seemed slightly off, as though it lagged just a fraction of a second behind her. At 11:58 p.m., she covered the mirror with a towel, just in case. At exactly 2:03 a.m., a knock echoed through the house. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. She sat up in bed, heart hammering. Her bedroom door creaked slightly as the air changed. The knock came again, this time louder, more urgent. She tiptoed to the front door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Another knock. Her phone screen stayed black when she tapped it. The flashlight app refused to open. She flipped a switch, nothing. Every light in the house flickered before dying completely, plunging her into a cold darkness. Then came a whisper, not from behind the door, but beside her ear. "Why won't you let me in, Marianne?" She jumped back, slamming into the wall, her breath ragged. The voice had been low, familiar, terrifying. When she gathered the courage to open the door hours later, nothing. No footprints on the porch. No signs of anyone. But on the welcome mat was the envelope, the wax seal unbroken. She hadn't placed it there. This time, the letter said, "Good. You survived the first one. But it's not over." She didn't tell anyone. Over the next 6 months, more letters came. Sometimes a week apart, sometimes a full month. Each one contained warnings. Don't get on the 6:15 train on Tuesday. Don't answer the call from the unknown number. Don't look out your window when you hear footsteps on the roof. She listened, every time, and every time she avoided something strange. Events she couldn't explain. A train derailment. A violent mugging on her street. The sound of something heavy walking across her roof at night, though no footprints appeared in the snow. Then, on a rainy morning in March, she noticed something odd. The handwriting on the letters, it looked familiar. Almost too familiar. It wasn't just elegant. It was hers. Not the way she wrote now, but the way she used to when she was younger and more careful with her penmanship. And in the margins of one note, barely visible in the light, were 3 words. "From your future." She tried to write a response and left it under her pillow. The next day it was gone, and in its place a new letter had arrived. "I can't tell you everything. Just trust me. If you stop listening, they'll find you." And this time, the knocking won't stop. To this day, the letters still arrive. Always in the same envelope. Always in the same red wax. And Marian always obeys. Because whatever version of herself is sending them knows something, and has already paid the price for not listening. In the summer of 2006, in a quiet rural town in Pennsylvania, a late-night radio enthusiast named Kyle Brewster stumbled across something strange while scanning the FM frequencies. He was an insomniac and often spent nights fiddling with old radio sets, searching for obscure signals, pirate stations, or forgotten broadcasts. But one night, he stopped on something he'd never heard before. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the dial landed on 103.3 FM, a frequency that, according to all records, wasn't in use in his area. First, it was just static, but beneath it, faintly, he heard what sounded like a woman crying. He turned the volume up. Between the white noise and feedback, her voice came through, whispering, "Help me, I'm still here." Startled, Kyle leaned closer. There was no music, no station identification. Just a loop of static and that voice, broken and full of pain. He recorded it on his cassette deck, certain it must be an experimental art project or some sort of hoax. But when he played the tape back the next morning, there was nothing. No crying, no whispers, just plain static. That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., he tuned in again. Same voice, same frequency. But now the message was different. "He's coming. Don't let him hear you, listen." Kyle tried asking the voice questions, even speaking into the mic of his old ham radio set. No response until he asked one question. "Who are you?" The radio crackled violently. Then silence. Then a single reply, clear and direct. "You knew me once, before you forgot." Kyle's blood ran cold. He told his girlfriend, who laughed it off at first. But when she stayed over one night and heard it for herself, she turned pale. "That voice," she said, "it sounds just like your sister." Kyle's sister, Amanda, had disappeared in 1993 when she was 10 years old. She'd been playing in the backyard and was never seen again. No suspects, no leads, nothing. But Amanda loved playing with walkie-talkies. She'd spent hours talking through the static. Kyle became obsessed. He stayed up every night, listening to 103.3. Each time, the voice sounded weaker, like it was fading. He asked where she was, begged for answers. And one night, he got one. "He keeps us underground, in the static. You can't save me, but you can hear us. You can remember." Then came a loud crackling, followed by a second voice. A male voice, deep and distorted. "Stop listening." The radio burst into high-pitched shrieks, and the lights in Kyle's house went out. His computer screens flickered with strings of indecipherable code. Every speaker in the house vibrated with distorted screams. And then, silence. After that night, 103.3 FM went dead. Kyle tried a dozen radios, different antennas, digital and analog. Nothing. He submitted his experience to paranormal forums, uploaded audio clips, but the files always got corrupted or vanished. Even the forums where he posted the recordings mysteriously went offline days later. Years have passed, and Kyle has moved to another state. But sometimes, when he's driving alone late at night, he scans the radio out of habit. He never finds 103.3 anymore. But every once in a while, for just a few seconds, he hears her voice. "I remember you." In 2018, a young woman named Celeste moved into a small studio apartment in Chicago. It was cheap, clean, and close to her new job. But there was one odd thing. The previous tenant had left behind an old Android phone. The landlord claimed the guy had died unexpectedly and that the phone had no passcode, so Celeste could keep or toss it. Curious, she charged it up and turned it on. What she found disturbed her immediately. There were 47 unread text messages, all from the same contact listed only as Mom. Most were simple phrases. "Where are you? Are you okay? Please come home." But the last message was dated 3 days after the supposed date of death. Don't trust the mirror. Still watching. That night, Celeste couldn't sleep. The phone kept buzzing, even though it wasn't connected to any service or Wi-Fi. Every time she checked, there were no new notifications. Just a rising number of unread messages in the inbox. All from Mom. She showed it to a coworker the next day who laughed it off until he tried deleting the messages. The screen flickered. Then the phone rebooted itself and showed a new message. Stop deleting him. Celeste tried to ignore it. She shut the phone off and locked it in a drawer. But the buzzing continued. Eventually, she took it to a repair shop. The technician opened the phone, frowned, and said, "This device has no SIM card and no messaging app installed." He handed it back and asked, "Did you say this belonged to the guy who died in that building fire?" Celeste hadn't, but now she needed answers. She began researching and found the tenant's name, Marcus Levin. He had died in the apartment 2 months before she moved in. There were conflicting reports. Some said it was a heart attack, others claimed a fire, but Celeste uncovered one detail that hadn't been made public. Marcus had become obsessed with a strange online community that believed certain reflections were doorways, mirrors, phone screens, even windows. According to his last forum posts, he believed he was being watched from inside the glass. One final post read, "They speak through devices now. If you hear them, don't respond. That's how they know where you are." The next morning, Celeste found a new message on the old phone. "Now we know where you are." Panicking, she threw the phone away in a dumpster. But when she returned home that night, the phone was sitting on her bed. The unread messages had jumped to 99 plus. All identical. "Let us in." She moved out the next day. But sometimes, her own phone buzzes at exactly 3:33 a.m., and the notification reads, "One new message from Mom." She never opens it. In 1994, a struggling novelist named Edward Millen moved into a small Victorian house nestled in the fog-drenched woods of upstate New York. The house had stood abandoned for over 3 decades after the mysterious disappearance of its former owner, Bernard C. Dwyer, a little-known horror writer whose last manuscript was never published. The house came fully furnished, untouched by time. Dust coated the surfaces like snow, and cobwebs clung to forgotten corners. But what truly caught Edward's attention was the attic. Amid the clutter of old trunks, broken furniture, and faded portraits, he discovered a pristine Underwood typewriter sitting atop an antique writing desk. It was oddly clean, as if someone had just used it. There was even a sheet of yellowed paper still loaded into the roller with a single sentence typed across the top. "The end is just the beginning." At first, Edward considered it a coincidence, a poetic memento left behind by the previous owner. But the moment his fingers touched the keys, something shifted. The air grew heavier, almost electric. He felt a sudden rush of inspiration and began typing with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. The typewriter worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. Its keys moved with fluid grace, responding to the lightest touch. Edward spent hours in the attic, writing feverishly. He didn't even notice the hours pass or the sun setting outside. That night, at precisely 3:17 a.m., Edward was jolted awake by a familiar sound. Clack, clack, clack. It was the typewriter. Thinking he had left a fan running or that perhaps a draft had knocked something over, he climbed the creaky attic stairs. The room was dark and cold. The typewriter was typing by itself. On the paper, a fresh message had appeared. "You found me. Let's write together." Edward stared in disbelief. He reached for the plug, but there was none. The machine wasn't electric. It shouldn't be able to move, let alone write. And yet, When he removed the sheet and inserted a blank one, it began typing again. The next few nights, the phenomenon repeated itself. At 3:17 a.m., the typewriter would resume writing, sometimes a line, sometimes full pages. Always chilling, always vivid. Edward began to read them. They were dark stories, more gripping than anything he had written. He transcribed them onto his computer and sent them to a publisher. The response was immediate. The work was brilliant. They wanted more. Emboldened, Edward continued. But soon, the tone of the writings shifted. One night, he found a page that read, "You're stealing. I remember everything. You took my voice." Edward tried to ignore it, brushing it off as psychological stress. But then, the messages turned violent. "He took my name. He took my life. He will write no more." Edward's reflection began to change. Late at night, in mirrors or windows, he would catch glimpses, not of himself, but of a thin, pale man with hollow eyes and ink-stained fingers. He searched the town records and discovered that Bernard C. Dwyer, the previous tenant, had vanished without a trace in 1959. Last seen in the same attic, sitting at that very typewriter. Panicked, Edward tried to destroy the machine. He threw it from the attic window, but in the morning it was back on the desk, unscratched. He doused it in lighter fluid and set it on fire, only for it to reappear whole by the evening. Then one morning Edward was gone. His publisher received a package postmarked from Millen's address. Inside were hundreds of typed pages. A full manuscript titled "The Author Returns" with no byline. The publisher assumed it was his next novel. When police arrived to investigate the house, they found it empty, save for the typewriter. A new sheet of paper was loaded, with the words, "Chapter 1. The keys moved," slowly typing a new sentence. "Edward was a thief. Now he writes for me." When my sister Claire passed away in a car accident in 2018, I thought the grief would consume me. She was only 22, bright, sarcastic, full of life. We had a bond that only siblings close in age could understand. After the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to delete her email from my contacts or even archive our old chats. They felt like a lifeline to something I couldn't let go. One quiet evening, about 6 months after her death, I was sorting through old messages on my laptop when I noticed a new email in my inbox, from Claire's address. First, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had hacked her account. But the subject line froze me. "Are you still there?" The body of the email was empty. No attachments. Just those 4 words. My heart pounded. I reread it a dozen times. It had been sent at 3:17 a.m. I tried replying, hoping it was a glitch, a spam bot, anything explainable. I wrote something simple. "Claire? If this is someone's idea of a joke, it's not funny." But the message bounced back. "Address not found." Over the next few weeks, more emails came, always at 3:17 a.m. "I can't find the way. It's cold here. Don't forget me." There were no headers, no IP trail, nothing my tech-savvy friend could trace. It was like the emails had appeared out of nowhere. Then came one with an attachment. A photo. It was an old picture, one I'd never seen before, of Claire and me as kids, sitting in a treehouse we used to play in. The odd part, in the background, standing among the trees, was a figure. It was blurry, but tall, thin, and completely black, like a silhouette made of smoke. His head was tilted toward us. I showed the photo to my parents, but they didn't remember ever taking it. Claire hadn't posted it online, and it wasn't in any of her backed-up files. After that, the emails became more desperate. "He doesn't want me to talk to you. He watches me write. He knows you're reading this." One night, I stayed up until 3:17 a.m., staring at my screen, waiting. Right on cue, a new message came in. Subject: goodbye. Body: he's here now. He says you've read enough. Don't look for me anymore. That was the last email I ever received. I've tried to tell myself it was a hoax, some horrible prank. But every time I walk by my sister's room, the light inside is on, even though the bulb's been removed. And sometimes, when I open my inbox late at night, I still expect to see a new message appear. But nothing ever comes. At least not yet. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. My wife, Sarah, and I had just put our baby, Lucas, to bed. It had been a long day, and we were finally looking forward to some quiet time. The baby monitor, a simple video and audio device, was set up in his nursery, and we left it on in the living room as we sat down to watch a movie. About an hour into the movie, I heard something strange, a soft, crackling noise coming through the monitor. I figured it was just interference, but the noise continued, growing slightly louder. Then I heard it, faint voice. It sounded like a whisper at first. I paused the movie and turned up the volume on the monitor. At first, it was unintelligible, just static. But then it became clearer. Mom, Dad. The voice was soft, as if it were coming from the other side of the room. Help me. I froze. That wasn't Lucas. It sounded like a woman's voice, weak and pleading. I turned to Sarah. Did you hear that? I asked. She nodded, her face pale. What was that? I grabbed the monitor and rushed into Lucas's room, convinced that maybe the sound was just some strange feedback from the device. But when I opened the door, Lucas was sound asleep in his crib, safe and calm. I checked the monitor's video feed. Everything looked normal. It was just the soft glow of the nightlight and the gentle rise and fall of Lucas's chest as he slept. Confused, I went back to the living room. I stood there for a moment, listening, wondering if I just imagined it. But then it came again, louder this time. Help me. I rushed back to the nursery, but when I opened the door, everything was as it should be. Lucas was still asleep. This time, I left the room and sat down in the hallway, trying to make sense of it all. The voice sounded desperate. It wasn't a random noise or feedback. It was as if someone or something was calling for help. I tried to reach out to other parents on online forums, but no one had any answers. Some suggested that it could be interference from another device or a glitch in the monitor. But the more I thought about it, the more I began to feel like it wasn't just random static. A few nights later, I heard the voice again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. Help me. I rushed into the room once more. But this time, as I stepped inside, I noticed something different. The air was cold, unnaturally cold. The room, despite being warmed by the heater, felt like a frigid wind had swept through. And in the corner, just by the crib, I could see a shadow, a dark, shapeless figure standing still. I blinked, and it was gone. But the temperature never returned to normal, and the voice never stopped. Since that night, I've heard the voice more and more. Sometimes, it's faint, like a whisper. Other times, it's a loud cry for help. We've changed baby monitors, moved Lucas to a different room, even considered moving out. But the voice always finds its way back. And each time I hear it, I can't help but wonder, is it Lucas calling for help or something else? Something that has found its way into our home? Those were the terrifying stories of communication from beyond the grave. Whether it's a letter with no return address, an email from a long-dead sister, or the chilling sound of a baby monitor picking up more than just static, one thing is clear. The dead have their own way of reaching out. Be careful what you wish for, because sometimes the messages from the other side might just find their way to you.